This is going to be a no bullshit, as usual, deep dive into how your nervous system is directly impacting your experience in having incredible sex, just like effortless pleasure in your life and consistent money flow. We love the topic of money and manifestation and abundance. So, we're going to talk about that today in terms of the nervous system, because you guys know I'm all about the somatic healing and I'm all about making sure that we're not just like, you know, thinking of doing these like surface level things that don't actually give us results. So we're going to talk today about feminine energy and money. We're going to talk about somatic healing. We're going to talk about the nervous system, and we're going to also talk about being a high achieving woman and burnout as well. So lots of different things. Get your notes out. This is going to be juicy. If you are on a walk listening, please re-listen to this episode if you want to get even more out of it. And let's dive in, ladies. Before we dive in, I want to remind you guys the immersion waitlist is currently open. There are two types of people that listen to my podcast. Type number one is the person that nods their head. They're like, oh, this is so good. They feel super activated by it, but they do nothing. They stay stuck in the same patterns. They cross their fingers that something else is going to change. Even though they're digesting all this information and they know they should be doing something differently, they're not. The other group of people that listen to this podcast, they take action. They invest in themselves. They step into rooms that expand them. They come to my 3-day immersion and then they walk away as the truest version of them. So my question for you, especially as we are, still kind of in that fresh new year energy and we're stepping into spring, which really is such a beautiful time to re-step into your goals for the year if you've kind of let them slide away, is which one are you? And what most people do is they actually start with empoweredly submissive. So if you are new here, start with empoweredly submissive. If you aren't sure about the 3-day immersion, that's completely fine. You're human, right? I'm not necessarily expecting you to go to 0 to 100. Start with empoweredly submissive. Do it now so that by the time the tickets come out for the immersion, you are either ready to buy or you confidently know, actually, this isn't for me. Okay, let's dive in, ladies. So the first thing is your nervous system is the gatekeeper to better sex, to more pleasure, and to more money. Now, I want to come at it from this angle. So the way that I talk about the nervous system, the nervous system and nervous system reprogramming and nervous system regulation has become a very trendy topic, which is great because we're bringing more awareness to this topic of the nervous system. However, what it can make a lot of people feel like is that in order to have a regulated nervous system, I have to do less. I have to stress less. I have to cut more out of my life. And for a lot of us, it's like, okay, well, that's all well and good, but I physically cannot cut any more out of my life right now. I cannot reduce my stress. I cannot do less. I have 5 kids, 3 businesses, or you're just like me, you don't even have the baby here yet, but it's like you're doing so much that you're like, I literally cannot reduce my load right now, because part of you also doesn't want to reduce your load because maybe you actually do love everything that you're doing and everything feels really really in alignment. So then this whole thing of regulate your nervous system by doing less, by reducing your stress, by taking things off your list, it can feel just really inactionable, basically. My reframe and my lens of it is actually not that. Like, yes, can you do a little bit less? Yes, where can you reduce your stress? What can you take off your plate? And I fully acknowledge that there's a lot of women that I work with where they're like, yeah, nothing else can be taken off the plate. And I'm like, cool, I get it. And that is where nervous system expansion work comes in. I talk about this in detail. I use like a mushroom, like adaptogen analogy inside of the masterclass, the free masterclass, the Blueprint to Feminine Embodiment. If you haven't listened to that, definitely go and do that. I talk about it in there, and we'll talk about it a little bit more in my new masterclass that I have coming up as well, which is Muse, is what it's called. Like, such a fucking vibey name. The link for that, by the way, is below. But nervous system expansion, I developed this incredible modality in London when I was stuck there during COVID, because I couldn't just reduce my stress and reduce the uneasiness that my body was feeling. I had to actually learn to adapt to it. I had to learn to actually welcome it and feel safe in holding it. And this is really important, because as you are wanting to increase your pleasure, increase your abundance, increase your manifestations, be able to hold more and have more in your life, your nervous system needs to feel capable of actually holding more, having better sex, having more pleasure, having more money. And your body is what dictates what you allow in. It's not just your mind. 80% of signals are sent from your body to your mind, 20% of signals are sent from your mind down to your body. So, whilst you need to be doing the mindset work, which is why I don't completely ignore that by any means in my work, it's not actually even 50% of the work. You need to actually also do the body work, the somatic work, because you do not manifest from your mind. You manifest from your body. If your nervous system is stuck in fight or flight, your body is then rejecting pleasure. It can't feel it. You don't feel safe to welcome it. You aren't going to be prioritizing it at all. Or if your body is in a freeze response, which for a lot of women, they are stuck in, and maybe you are as well, a numbed out, frozen, disassociated state, or that's where they'll often go into. They don't so much go into fight or flight, but when work's been really busy, it is more of that detachment, avoidance, and freeze response. You cannot feel pleasure in that place in your body. So when your body is stuck in fight, flight, or freeze, your body is then rejecting pleasure. It's not able to welcome it. You're not motivated to go towards it. Same with abundance and same with ease, because you manifest from your body. That is why I created the term embodied manifestation, because once you understand that manifestation is an embodied experience, you realize, oh, I don't have to sit down and do 300 mantras a day and journal 5 pages in order to actually manifest my dream life. I have to make sure my body is in alignment. My life is in alignment. Now, that doesn't mean you have this perfect life where nothing negative happens, because that's not alignment either. It's actually really being able to experience the fullness of the human experience and actually welcome it all. That's what true alignment is. And of course, also true alignment is part of making sure that your life is in alignment with what you actually want and what you actually desire. So if you are in scarcity, if you feel numbed out, if you feel disconnected, if you are kind of trapped in this struggle, it's not your fault. They are familiar to your nervous system. And remember, whatever is familiar to your nervous system is deemed as safe. Even if you're like, toxic relationships are not safe, it's not what I want, it's not what I want to keep engaging with, until you rewire your nervous system and actually heal that root of where your nervous system was programmed into that, you are going to continue to recreate them, attract them in, and be attracted to them because they're familiar to your nervous system. So just circling back for a second, I said at the beginning of this, your nervous system is the gatekeeper for more sex, better pleasure, and more money. And part of understanding that is, okay, where is my nervous system being attracted? And where am I creating situations that consciously I'm like, I don't want this anymore. Like, ew, I'm so done with this pattern. That's great that you're consciously aware that you're done with the pattern. But until that is programmed into your nervous system, you ain't done with the pattern. Okay. And this is why the kind of just like fluff advice of just relax in the bedroom, just breathe, just practice deep breathing. That is why so many of us find that to be really unhelpful advice, because it doesn't actually create a change at the nervous system level. And we need change to happen at the nervous system level. And this is what you can be starting to do tonight if you want to, if you join Empoweredly Submissive, which you can literally get for $149. And that's a really great starting point. For those of you that have already done it, you're going to then want to be either doing Queen Alchemy next and or my 3-day immersion, because then we do so much more of that in those 2 containers. What I do want to say, because I don't want to completely shit on mindset work, because it is important, especially for integration, for embodiment, and for like continuing on, is money mindset work, or any mindset work, I should say, including money mindset work. It works once you have done that body-based healing. So for example, in my program, Her Year, we have a month on, it's actually this month, March, a month on mindset mastery, because I am very aware of how my mindset has really helped me radically get through challenges in life, make sure I'm not self-sabotaging, all those good things. But the mindset stuff only really works, and you can only feel it being anchored into your body. And like you can really rely on pivoting your mindset. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. Now I'm just going to choose to believe this, and that happens once your body can actually receive and be like a yes to that new belief, for example. But I didn't even realize I spilled water down myself. It's just on my belly. But for a lot of people, they are wondering why they're doing mantra after mantra after mantra after mantra, and they're still not feeling enough, for example. And the reason is because their body doesn't actually believe that they are enough. And so let me expand on this actually. So when it comes to mantras, maybe some of you have actually felt this before. It's when you say something like, I am enough, but you don't actually believe it in your body. What does your brain do once you say that? Your brain goes and really it's your ego. No, you're not. Now, every time you then are doing your mantra work, if you actually don't fully believe that in your body, what happens is, and some of you might feel validated. Some of you might not know this is happening. Some of you might have known this is happening and you're like, oh, now I get it. Is what you're doing is every time you say, I am enough, but you don't actually believe it, what you are actually validating and giving space to the thought of, I am not enough. So you say, I am enough, or money comes back to me tenfold, and your brain goes, no, it doesn't. Now you just feel more scarce. And that's why people can feel like sometimes the mindset work is like frustrating, because what's happening is, and obviously we're all different, but what's happening is they're actually going into deeper dysregulation and scarcity and frustration and all of that because they're focused on their mind, which their body is totally rejecting. Their nervous system is rejecting that. Their ego is rejecting that. But if you focus on the body first, and that becomes your new equilibrium, it becomes your new foundation, it becomes your new source of truth and like regulation in your nervous system, and it's so deeply wired in there, then like I do mantras now, but they work. They work because I did the body-based healing, and I make sure I'm doing it all the time whenever I need to. I focus on my body rather than just focusing on my mind. Okay. The other thing that we need to understand when it comes to your nervous system and how your nervous system influences your sex life and money and polarity and all of that is sex and money are actually the same energy, and therefore they can cause the same blockages. So sex and money are both about receiving. Like for us as women, we need to receive money. We need to receive in the bedroom. And so if you feel guilt or shame or stress or this fear of like someone's going to take it away, people have that a lot with money, and so they struggle to hold money. Someone's going to take it away, or if I make all this money, I'm going to have to give it to somebody. Like my mom is going to demand that I have to give it to her, for example, or all my siblings are going to be like, great, now you make all this money, can you help us out, for example? And you don't have those boundaries to then be like, actually, no, like, and you don't have a respectful relationship with yourself and money. Won't go down that rabbit hole, but that's the thing. Is what was I saying? Sex and money are both about receiving. And so if you feel like that shame or that guilt or that fear or that contraction around one, maybe that's money, maybe that's sex, I guarantee you it is impacting the other, because it's all just about receivership. And if you're like, oh my God, I suck at receiving, I have a whole podcast episode on receivership. So please make sure that you go to the podcast directory on the website page, just search receivership, and then it will come up, and go and listen to that episode. Or you could just search it in like the podcast app. You could just search feminine as F, miss the U, and then CK, and then type receiving in, and then it should come up as well. But a lot of women, they struggle to receive because of what they think is going to happen as a result of receiving. And so their body, their nervous system does not feel safe to let go into their feminine, into receivership, because of these fears. And so many of us sit here and are struggling with our relationship with money, or we are struggling in being able to just say thank you when someone gives us a compliment, or we are struggling with the ability to just say thank you to a chivalrous man that is trying to help us. And think about the reality that how you show up in one area of life is how you show up in all areas of life. So if you're struggling to receive in one area of life, I guarantee you, maybe you're not fully aware of it, but it is definitely putting a limit on how much you could be receiving in another area of life. So you could be thinking, oh, like, no, I have a great relationship with money. Like, I don't, I can receive all the money. Like, that feels easy. Okay. But what if, like, okay, maybe you do have a great relationship with money, but what if your inability to receive in the bedroom is actually causing you to receive less money than you possibly could? Like, you could be on the brink of so much more abundance and opportunity and success, but because you don't know how to actually receive, you are cock blocking yourself. Okay, so your nervous system needs to feel safe in receiving. And if you are struggling to let go of control in one area of life, or you are struggling to just be able to fully receive something for whatever reason in one area of life, it's going to be showing up in another area of life. And you've probably heard me say this before, but if you're new here, then you won't have. When it comes to control, we are wanting control on something, if you are wanting to be in control of something, control gives us the illusion of safety. It's not real safety. Control issues are rooted in a trauma response. We think that the more control we have, the safer we are going to be. And for obvious reasons, right? If you didn't have any control in various situations when you were little, then obviously you're going to want control in those situations now, because then you feel safer. But it's an illusion, because being in control doesn't actually mean that you're safe. In fact, I think, and I know, that true safety, when you truly feel inherently safe in your body, you're not in control. You're in surrender. You're in trust. You're in relaxation. You can actually let go, because you don't need to be in control in order to feel safe. So think about that in terms of like the nervous system and feminine energy. We can't talk about feminine energy in the way that I do it anyway. I don't talk about feminine energy and being in your feminine without also this awareness and this healing component of trauma and the nervous system. And that's all obviously interwoven, because if you have all of this trauma, you have all this dysregulation, how the fuck can you be in your feminine? You literally cannot be in your feminine then. You cannot let go. You cannot receive. You cannot surrender. You can maybe tell yourself you are, but you're not actually doing it fully and properly, because your body does not feel safe to actually do so. So even just as a starting point, ladies, like just as a little bit of a tip to take away from today's podcast, what is something that makes you feel more regulated? For me, it's just literally going outside. Like, I have been loving this weather that we've been having. March is a beautiful time in Atlanta. March and April are just like the best months, because it hasn't gotten too hot yet. The bugs aren't out. And I just get to be, sitting outside with a cup of tea in my bra and undies, not in a bikini, because like the bikini tops do not fit my melon boobs. Pregnancy, they do not fit. And I sit outside and I'm replying to all of my clients. And I feel so much more grounded and regulated working outside than if I'm sitting inside in my office all day. Then I just feel like I'm not nearly as regulated, right? Even though my office is a calm, beautiful space, it's just a different energy. So what is something that you could be doing that would bring more regulation to your body? And you could be doing it on a semi-regular basis. And of course, if you want that nervous system expansion tool, which you totally do, and my nervous system regulation techniques, which are not just like, oh, shake or ground or do breath work, like, and not my breath, not in terms of like the kind of breath work that I do, but like basically learn to breathe. If you want something way more tangible, but something that you can actually do in the moment, because a lot of those nervous system regulation techniques you actually can't do in the moment. Like, when you need to regulate your nervous system, they aren't practical. Like, you can't just stop and start doing like some deep breathing thing. You can't start shaking in the moment or jumping up and down to release the energy or regulate your nervous system. But the tools that I give you guys, like, and you can Google those things, the tools that I give you guys, you can actually use in the moment. The tools are truly for integration and embodiment. And so because they're used for integration and embodiment, you're using them in the moment because you're integrating this new level of regulation that you have from the healing work, you're integrating the healing work into your life so that you can actually embody those things. And in order for you to integrate them, you've got to have these tools. And this is the whole like HER healing framework, HER, healing, embodiment, and radiance. So first step is healing. And then in order to actually go to embodiment, you got to integrate all of the healing. I give you all of the steps to integrate all of that. Then you become the embodiment. You're practicing being the embodiment. From that place of then being the embodiment, you don't have to think about regulating your nervous system. Like, I don't think about nervous system regulation on a daily basis. I don't think about being in my feminine. I don't think about, oh, how can I speak my truth in this moment? I just do it. Like, it's just my new natural state of being. And that is that R, that is radiance. Other tip I'm going to give you guys is if you have that I have to be in control wound, obviously that's going to totally inhibit you from experiencing deep pleasure, from fully relaxing and therefore being able to have amazing sex. And if you're struggling to orgasm in sex, that is a control issue. That is an inability in your body to feel safe, fully letting go to that extent. Because the truth is, when you are in that vulnerable situation, and what's funny, but like what's a common thread for anybody wondering is a lot of women will say to me, how is it that I can orgasm with a one night stand and a guy I give less fucks about than anybody in my life, but I can't orgasm with the guy that I really care about? And it's like, because you have more to lose. Because it feels scarier to fully let go and fully open because you actually really like him. Like, you could then get hurt because you actually care about him. Whereas the one night stand, you don't care what he thinks about you because you're like, this is not going anywhere. It's a one night stand. And so therefore you give yourself more permission to just be the wildest version of you, to fully let go, to literally like die and be reborn. Like, that's energetically kind of what orgasm is. And actually, isn't it in French? I think they mentioned this at Emily in Paris. Like, in French, orgasm means to die, right? But in order to have an orgasm, you have to be in such a state of surrender, and you're not exactly necessarily going to look like the cutest little chick when you're in the state of surrender. You're going to actually be really welcoming more of the kind of like wild, chaotic, free, emotional side of you. And we can judge ourselves for that. And we don't want him to judge us. So we then go, oh, I've just got to be in control. So when you have that control wound, that is going to stop you from being able to have those really amazing orgasms that you want to with the guy that you actually really like, or with the man that you love, because of the fact that you are afraid of him fully seeing you. Fully seeing you. You do not have that inherent safety within yourself that is vital to then have your nervous system feeling safe to be seen. I've done a whole episode on being seen. So if you need that episode, again, type being seen in the podcast directory. But my tip is when you next are having sex or intimacy or just feeling that need to control come up, can you just ask yourself, what am I afraid is going to happen if I let go of control? Because just that awareness is the first step in doing any healing, right? That's not a somatic process where it's going to release the wound, but it is a process that I can ethically give you. And it is a little tip that I can ethically give you to help you to start to just become aware of potentially some of the programming. And you might actually hear the answer and you're like, wait, that's crazy. Why do I think that? But that right there then is the proof of like, just because your mind thinks one thing doesn't mean that your body thinks another thing. And this is exactly what we are doing amongst many other things at the 3-day immersion. We are rewiring your body to feel safe in letting go of control, to feel safe being in your feminine, to feel safe in receiving pleasure, truly to actually feel safe in being the truest, most authentic version of you. There is always such a variety of women that come to the immersion, and it's so beautiful because we're not all trying to be the same person. There's not like this like goal that you need to achieve by the end of the 3 days. The goal is actually coming home to you. And we are doing the deepest level of somatic work that I can be doing with you because we are in person. And like, that is the beauty of an intimate group in person. And I purposely do not have like groups of 100 people because I then cannot come around to all of you. And so if you have tried mindset work and nothing has shifted, this is your missing piece. And if for whatever reason you can't come to the immersion, then Queen Alchemy is another amazing option because we do all the somatic work in there. But also, don't tell yourself you can't come just because of like time or work or you have kids. Do you know how many mums come to these immersions? How many people with like very important jobs come to these immersions? They prioritize them, right? Like I said at the beginning of this episode, they're those people that are like, oh yeah, that would be nice, like nodding their head, listening to the episode, doing nothing about it. And then there are the people that are like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there because this is important to me. And I want the benefits and the results of coming to the immersion. Okay, so you know how I was saying earlier about like you will your nervous system will then recreate or create situations that feel quote unquote safe and they basically feel familiar. So a common one of this is like you create drama in your relationships or you create stress or you create a situation, you make it bigger than Ben-Hur. I don't know whether everyone knows that phrase, but like you just make it bigger than it needs to be because that is what is familiar to your body. This is why so many people are addicted to drama. They're addicted to stress. They're addicted to hustling. They are addicted to being the victim. I know, triggering, but they are addicted to being the victim. I mean, I was even saying to Queen Alchemy Lady this morning in Telegram, like people can get addicted to personal development because they are addicted to being broken. And so what happens is they find problems that don't actually exist because it fulfills the narrative of I am broken. And then they can continue to blame, oh, well, I haven't done this thing. And so that's why XYZ is not happening in my life. Oh, I haven't healed this thing. So that's why this one isn't happening in my life. And really, it's just like another form of self-sabotage, right? And I was thinking about it of why do women self-sabotage and men, but women do it a lot, especially just when things are getting good. Like think about it. If you do this, like why do we self-sabotage right as things are getting good? And often the reason why we do it very often is because it feels overwhelming. This newness that we are about to step into, this going outside of our comfort zone, it feels overwhelming. It feels stressful. It feels unknown to our nervous system. And so until you have that control over your nervous system and until you actually know how to bring safety into your body so that you can actually go into that next level and, you know, hold a bit of safety in there rather than just self-sabotaging, until you have that nervous system control, you will sabotage right when things are about to get good because truly, truly, truly to your body, oh, it feels like too much. And I think sometimes that when it comes to the feminine energy work, people can fall into this trap of thinking like, oh, you know, I can't push myself into things. I just have to like surrender and let it happen. I have to trust my intuition, you know, like, oh, this is scary. Like it's not good for my nervous system. So I'm going to go the other direction. Do not confuse nervous system dysregulation with being afraid of going outside of your comfort zone. Because every time you go outside your comfort zone, every time you go into a new season of life, you're trying something new, you're dating a guy that you actually like, it is going to feel scary. You know, the difference between those people that are growing in life and expanding in life and in their careers, and then those people that aren't, is just that the first person is able to, what I like to describe, control your nervous system and control your response so that you do not then just go, oh, scary, other direction. And they are able to, with whatever tactic they're using, move through that discomfort. And the other people, they go, oh, this feels uncomfortable, I'm going to run the other way. And I say this in regards to the whole like, oh, feminine energy, like trust my intuition, because people also think trusting your intuition, they get it confused with trusting fear. Like, and I'm saying this, I'm not saying this in like a laughing, like mean way. I'm saying it in the sense of like, wow, we really have actually moved so far away. And I do think this is like social media and just like, you know, just us outsourcing our power to everybody else and not to ourselves. But I do think that so many people, they have come so far away from their intuition that they actually trust their fear over their body and their intuition and over their heart. And the part of that is because they've gotten so used to just doing whatever their fear is saying. And so their fear is saying like, nope, this is scary. You shouldn't do it. Run the other direction. But just because something is scary doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. Very often what's actually scary is what you should do, because that is where the expansion lies. Very often your quantum leap lies in the thing that you do not want to do. And I say this as somebody that is launching their book. And I can't tell you, ladies, how many things there have been where I'm like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. But I'm not doing it. I'm noticing the resistance. I'm noticing my desire, like my ego's desire to be like, nope, make up an excuse. And I don't play into that at all, because that's not going to make me feel good in the long term. And instead, I'm kind of what I was saying before, I am controlling my nervous system. I'm controlling my response to things. And then I'm actually showing up as the version of myself that I aspire to be and that I would be proud of being. But a lot of us have forgotten that discipline with ourselves is actually a form of nervous system regulation, because when we know we are going to follow through with our own word, when we know if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And when we have that discipline within ourselves, that integrity within ourselves, that builds self-trust and that builds confidence. And that also keeps our nervous system regulated. Because if we are constantly letting ourselves down, we can't trust our word, we've got no self-discipline, are you going to feel regulated? No, you're going to feel stressed. You're not going to know what your body's going to do. You're not going to be able to trust yourself. Am I just going to pull out of doing this thing? And a lot of people have that. They have these knee-jerk reactions because they have not learned how to rewire their nervous system, how to hold their nervous system, how to bring safety into their nervous system when they are expanding. But of course, what I also want to say is that doesn't mean every time I'm expanding or anytime anybody is expanding and going to the next level, that it just feels easy. There has been so much that I have done in my life, and so much this year as well, so much this year especially, where I know obviously how to use my nervous system regulation techniques and expansion techniques and like holding and controlling techniques. So I go and do the thing that I do want to do, but I'm still nervous. I'm still a bit afraid. I'm still a bit scared. I'm still a bit like, oh God, I hope it goes well. But I'm not so dysregulated that I'm then bloated afterwards, having stomach cramps, shitting my brains out, like unable to sleep, getting a headache because I'm overthinking. Those physical manifestations that are very often a result of nervous system dysregulation and trauma and overthinking and perfectionism and procrastination, I'm not having those things, right? Because I'm able to identify that this is actually something that is going to like bring me so much goodness, and I'm actually really excited for this. It's just that my ego is really scared, and sometimes separating the two can actually be really helpful. So if you are trying to make a decision for yourself and you really want to do it, but your ego is also really scared, separate the two, right? Separate your heart, your intuition, that gut feeling from your ego, and actually identify for yourself, okay, this is all the fear talking. And like, that's all valid points, right? And it makes sense. Like, that's what your fear is saying. But do you want to be driven by fear? Do you want to make your decision out of fear, or do you want to make it out of curiosity and love and excitement and expansion and self-trust? And the last thing I'm going to say, because I know I mentioned this at the beginning in regards to a burnout, if you will, and being a highly successful woman. I said this earlier before of the addiction to stress. I've done an episode on purely that topic of the addiction to stress, but I want to explain to you how you can know if your nervous system is in this state of like quote unquote high functioning burnout. And high functioning burnout is basically, it's kind of like, I mean, some people say they have like high functioning anxiety and they're not really aware of it kind of thing. And again, you guys know, don't add labels. Like, labels do not help anybody. All they do is 90% of the time, all they actually do is give you an excuse to continue to like have more excuses for yourself, basically. But notice the high functioning burnout, because a lot of women have high functioning burnout where they are actually burnt out and they don't realize they are burnt out. They are in this chronic state of functioning so highly, of getting so much done. They're just basically in this chronic state of fight and flight that they cannot feel their bodies burn out. And why this is detrimental is because what happens is you end up going into a state of low cortisol where you then like can't get out of bed. You've been hit by a bus. You're so exhausted. If anybody's felt that, that's what low cortisol is, where like for a consistent period of time, not just like, oh, on a Thursday morning after a big week, for a consistent period of time, you literally feel more exhausted waking up than when you went to bed. You'll often get like a second wind at nighttime. Which just like obviously makes the problem even worse. But when in the morning when you wake up, you feel like you've been hit by a bus. Low cortisol is when your body has been in a state of high cortisol for so long and you haven't listened and your body goes, I'm out. I can't keep producing all of this cortisol to keep you going. So boom, it then goes back, it retracts into a state of low cortisol. And that's a problem because then you have no energy. You've got no motivation. It's really like you obviously don't want to be in a state of high cortisol, but you definitely don't want to be in a state of low cortisol. Sometimes people think, oh, low cortisol, that's great. Like it means I'm low in cortisol, like I'm low in cortisol, like as though that's a good thing. Like you're not very stressed. No, low cortisol happens after you have been in a state of high cortisol for such a long period of time. I cannot tell you how many women I see that are actually in a state of low cortisol. They didn't even know for those 3 years prior that they were on the verge of burnout until they fully burnt out. And part of that is us being so disconnected from our bodies, so disconnected from life, so numbed out, so disassociated, so just like running on the hamster wheel that we don't even feel those little signs and signals. So if you're in this state of like high functioning burnout, you might notice that things feel so hard, even if you're really successful. So you are really successful at your job, you know what you're doing, and you sit down and it's just like, oh my God, like everything just feels so hard, like you are dragging your physical body along with you. Notice that because we as women have this beautiful ability to be so magnetic in what we do and what we offer the world in every single job. I do not believe you have to be like, running your own business by any means, but a lot of us don't tap into that. And this obviously when you're growing your career, like you're in a little bit of a different season of life, right? You really need to kind of like show up, you need to grind a little bit more, you need to do the extra thing to really prove like you are amazing at your job, you are keen, you are learning, all that kind of stuff. But for the women that are highly successful women, really notice that. Like, are you in the state of high functioning burnout? Are you addicted to being stressed? Where, on the weekends, for example, when you are not working, or maybe you are, but like you're trying to not work, when you're not working, you are so tired. Or you don't know what to do with yourself. Like you get like you're bored and then it's like a freak out of like, okay, I got to find something to do. You can't just sit still and like stare at the birds or sit outside. If you struggle to be really present, you feel like you've constantly got to be on the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And I say this as somebody that used to struggle with being addicted to being stressed because I saw my stress as a badge of honor. I really saw my stress as a badge of honor. And so if you notice that when you try to slow down or even the thought of that is just like, oh no, I can't do that. That thought just like freaks you out. Your nervous system might be in that state of high functioning burnout or that state of stress addiction where you actually feel like high when you're stressed. You feel more energized when you are running around during the day doing a million things. You're way more productive in that state. But if you are having a more relaxing day, you got a few things to do, maybe you're sitting outside or you're on holidays, but you're also working at the same time, you might notice you're way less productive. You get way less work done. You can't get into a workflow state, for example. That tells me you are addicted to stress, where your body has learned that the way to have high output is to be stressed. And so what happens? You then continue to create stress. You create drama, you create problems at work, or if a problem happens, it's like you almost that stress that moves through your body, you almost use it as ammunition and like fuel versus being like, all right, this is what we're doing to solve it, moving on next. And disengaging from the stress. Like I literally think about, I have to catch myself sometimes, just really making sure that I'm unplugging from the drama. I unplug from engaging in that. I shut shit down. I'm like, no, we're not engaging, right? Or like, this is the end of the conversation. Like, we don't need to keep going on about this because Who are we helping by draining our energy? We're not helping anybody, right? And we're not necessarily doing this for any other reason than just because we have wired our nervous system, or our nervous system has been wired from a young age to feel safer, quote unquote, when we are stressed, because that feels more familiar. So ladies, final thought for you all to just leave with and just ponder on this. Really remember, we are all in different seasons of life. So make this your own. But I truly believe that, and I this has like really come through more even since being pregnant, is the woman who has it all isn't doing it all. She's allowing more in. She is allowing more help. She's allowing more support. She's allowing more intuition. She's allowing more safety. She's allowing more growth in herself, and you get to be her. You know, like people look at me and they say, how do you do it all? I'm like, I'm not. It looks like I'm doing it all, of course. And I am somehow doing it all, but I'm doing it all with a cleaner and a housekeeper and a team, you know, and an amazing husband and no children yet, right? And an environment that's regulating to my nervous system. Living in Atlanta has been such a blessing. I'm actually so glad that I left New York, because I would be not in this state if I was trying to do all this book stuff and be pregnant living in New York City. It wouldn't be happening. I would be running on that hamster wheel, and I would 100% be back in that state of being addicted to stress, because stress is addictive. So just remember that. You don't need to be doing it all. You need to allow more in. You need to, recapping on some of the things, you need to get better at receiving, because part of receiving is also asking for help and then receiving it. And women suck at asking for help, right? Especially if that is a wound of yours, or you're working on your own confidence. You probably struggle to ask for help, because it's like, no, I want to prove my independence. I want to prove my worth. I want to prove this. You have nothing to prove, right? That's why I say, like, do the trauma healing work. Join us in Queen Alchemy. Join Empoweredly Submissive. It's $149. Start with that, because then you will stop feeling the need to prove anything, because you will inherently feel enough. You will inherently feel safe in yourself, and you will not be outsourcing your sense of worth to anybody else. Okay. So I hope this was helpful. I know we kind of like jumped around a little bit, but I feel like that can be really nice sometimes in an episode. And then I can direct you guys back to some of the older episodes to listen to, because old is not old, not in my world anyway, right? Things aren't, I mean, unless it's like a life update episode, things are not outdated. All right. Okay. I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for being here. Please make sure that you have pre-ordered your book if you haven't already pre-ordered it, and that you have also booked your tickets for any of the book events that you can come to as well. All the pre-order bonuses will be disappearing on April 8th. So make sure that you do not wait. Your pre-orders help me, but they also mean that you guys get those special bonuses.